Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and welcome to ReactJS Crash Course. In this one little bit longer video, we're going to take a look on what ReactJS is, and moreover, we're going to work on it. We will create a simple project on the ReactJS so that everybody can understand as well as work on a project in the ReactJS. ReactJS is an amazingly powerful as well as super popular library. This video is designed specifically in the mind that beginners are watching this video and they want to understand the React as well as want to do some of the hands-on project on the React. And my specialty is to turn the toughest topic in the easiest one. So this video is going to help you to not only understand the React in the most easiest and the simplest manner, but also working on a hands-on project. I highly recommend that if you watch this video, make sure you watch it while doing it. This video is specially crafted so that you can follow along with me on every single movement and can do exactly what I'm doing on the screen on your screen as well. You'll be able to design this project just like I'm doing it in this entire video. This pretty long video, I don't know how much long it is divided actually into the 4 sections. Section number 1, in which I'm going to talk you through about some of the common questions and common queries that are for the React.js. These questions include absolute beginner questions as well as little bit intermediate question as well. In the section 2, I'm going to throw up some of the jargon keywords of the React.js. Whenever you are learning any new library or the framework, there are few jargons associated with them. So I'm going to just throw them right in front of you, and we'll try to explain a little bit of them. Not really in depth because it's just a crash course, but still I'll explain like a little bit in detail about what these jargons are, and you don't need to worry about any of them. In the section 3, I'm going to walk you through about what are the tools that you need to download and from where to download and what to keep in mind while downloading these tools. These tools are cross-platform, and I have taken a special care that everybody who is on Windows, on Mac or Linux can actually follow along. So no need to worry about anything. All the tools are cross-platform. And in the final 4th section, we're going to actually jump directly into my computer and we're going to do a project. This is going to be a simplistic project, but while working on this project, I'll make sure that you understand in depth about what is the file structure, how we can recreate the entire structure, and what are the things that you need to take care. I'll also mention some of the stay away points as well while working on the code part. We'll explain some of the issues that you may fall into, as well as we're going to work together. Now, one more important stuff, all the exercise files, project files, and the code files that we will be working on in this entire course are also available. I will upload this video on learncodeonline.in, my website, where I post a lot of videos as well. This course is absolutely free and all the exercise files are also free. Not only that, I have also enabled the discussion section so that like-minded people who are more interested in React.js can work in the community in the discussion section and can help each other out, as well as maybe make some friends and start something amazing as well. So now that we are ready to go for the React.js crash course, I would like to need a little bit help from your side as well. I would like to know in the comment section, are you interested in these kinds of crash courses? If yes, post down in the comment section, yes for crash course. And also, I would like to let you know that what is the next topic that I should pick up for the crash courses. So point out your subject, your topic, on which I should make a crash course, and post that in the below section. Based on the popularity of a subject, I'm going to pick up the next crash course topic and will make it absolutely clear and easy to understand. So comments are important. Let me know in the discussion section what should be the next topic, and don't forget to post yes for crash course if you like the crash courses. So it's going to be a little bit longer video, not little, it's going to be too much longer video. So grab your iced tea or whatever is your drink, maybe coffee. So grab that up and let's get started with a crash course on React.js. Okay, so all set. Let's get started with the very first section of the React.js crash courses, which are questions of internet. So question number 1, what is React.js? React.js is a library designed by Facebook, and now it is open source. There are no licensing issues and you can use it in absolutely any project. React.js makes our life much more easier. Surely, without React.js also, you can create any project that you want, any project that you like. It's not going to be any trouble. It's not like React.js will give you certain things which you cannot do in any other programming language. Surely it's possible. But React.js helps us in easing our life much more. You can create components in the React, and these components are lifesaver. For example, let's just say you have created a button, and so far that button, whenever you want that, you just copy and paste the code. But in the React.js, you can use that component as a reusable component. Once that button or the card is being designed, it can be reused anywhere you like. And whatever the elements are inside that component, maybe the button text or maybe the card, like images or any text, these are super modifiable and can be just inserted from anywhere. This makes life much more easier. With the React, a couple of things are also important. Things like its fast reloading, its optimization, its performance. These are some of the things which attracts the big companies to work on with the React, and hence React is gaining its popularity. Question number 2. Can React work with my X tech stack, where X can be anything, including Ruby on Rails, MySQL, Node.js, Django? It can be anything. Just insert your favorite tech stack in place of the X. One of the main features about the React.js is its lightweight and its injectability. React.js can be inserted with anything. Just pick up your favorite stack, whether it's Ruby on Rails or Django. You can use React with any existing tech stack. In fact, on its website as well, they mention that we don't assume anything about your backend or any logical stuff that you are doing up. You can use React with any of the library, and which is the main reason why React is gaining its popularity. Question number 3. What are the prerequisites if I want to learn React.js? Although React.js is really simple to understand, as well as it's a very small library, so you don't need to spend much of the time in understanding it. It's pretty quick to learn. But definitely, since it's a JS-based platform, it is assumed that you are pretty comfortable with JavaScript. Now, in case you are not, no need to worry. I do have a free playlist on JavaScript as well. You can watch that video series, and it's a pretty good video series, and after that, you'll be absolutely good to go with the React.js. But I still recommend that if you have any prior other programming language experience as well, I still recommend you to watch this crash course. It will give you a whole lot of idea how things actually work in React.js. Now, some of the questions by intermediate user of React, or somebody who has actually coded a little bit on the React or known of React about a little bit. What are the recent changes that has been implemented in the React.js library? Just like any other framework or library, there is a continuous development cycle in which the team is actually working on every single day. So it's obvious that the changes are going to appear. One of the most common changes that everybody is talking about is React.js hooks. But you don't need to worry anything about the hooks. As mentioned clearly on the website, that hook is nothing groundbreaking. It's not going to break your existing things that you're doing in the React. It just is a new feature that I'm trying to give you. Let me touch this subject hooks, and this is totally for the people who are already familiar with the React, not at all for the beginners. Beginners can actually just fast forward this for a couple of minutes. So hooks are the new addition in the React.js, and these are supplemental and must-have things in the React. Now, you can totally work without the hooks as well. In most of the cases, actually, for a beginner level project, you don't need hooks. Hooks were implemented because in the React, there was no such state management library, and even for small projects, people were using big giants like Redux. In order to get rid of the need of the Redux, the hooks were implemented, and they are absolutely backward compatible. And question number 2 about the intermediate users are class-based components going away from the React? Now, very soon, we're going to create our very first component or very first project in the React, and you're going to notice that the default is now presented as a functional component instead of class component. And don't worry for all the beginners, I'm going to throw up these jargons and a little bit later, but first and foremost, let me address these intermediate users. So yes, although the functional component are pretty much on the center of attraction for everybody and hooks are also there, but let me just clearly mention that class-based components are not going anywhere. And since functional components are more and should be used more, because a lot of projects and a lot of components don't even need class. If you need the class, definitely 100% go for class-based component. But if you can just get away by declaring a functional component, just use that. And that's exactly what the React team wants to convey through their website as well. Okay, so now that the section 1 is over about the common questions about React, let's move on to the section number 2. Jargons of the React.js world. And in fact, there are lots of jargons that are going to come in front of you. I'm going to mention only few of them. The first jargon that usually appears is the virtual DOM. So what is this virtual DOM? Simply assume, let's just say there is a comment section on the YouTube. You write a comment and somebody replies to your comment, and then somebody also again comes and replies to your comment. In the usual case scenario, we have to hit the reload onto the entire web page to load those comments up. But in the world of React, not even the entire page needs a reload. Only the component which are being updated now gets updated, and that's basically your virtual DOM. But surely there is a lot more to learn, but right now this is more than enough. More jargons. Props and state. You're going to hear them a lot as well. Props is a shortcut for properties. Properties doesn't sound really cool. Props sound cool, so that's why they are being used a lot. Another thing that you're going to see a lot in the React.js is state. Now, these are the things which are pretty much easy to understand while working in the code file as well, so I'll touch them there only. I haven't even started to talk about React and still talked about components. So yes, component is another jargon that you're going to see, and we're going to create some of these components so that they are much more easier to understand there. You are going to hear about two types of component in the React. The one is the class-based component, another one is functional component. Both are almost exactly same. There is no much of a vital difference, but class-based components are much more powerful and can be used onto a next scale. So yeah, these are the two jargons you're going to hear a lot. And finally, the new jargon that's coming up in the React world is the hooks. Now, hooks definitely require a crash course in itself, or probably a full-fledged course in itself, but definitely I'm going to show you some of the documentation about the hooks, a little bit detailed, but we are not going to touch them in this crash course at least. If you want me to make a separate crash course on the hooks, let me know in the comment section. I'll be happy to do it. Okay, so now that we are done with our section 2 as well, let's move on to the section 3, where we are going to learn what are the tools that we need to install and how we can proceed further in building a project. Although these are two separate sections, but kind of a one in itself. So let's jump into the computer and try to find out and download the tools that are required for starting this React.js crash course. Cheers, and let's get started with our React.js crash course. So first and foremost, let me mention that React.js, this crash course is going to be a little bit informal compared to my other videos that I do in my courses, because it's going to be a really long video and I'm going to be sipping up my iced tea, so I hope you don't mind that. If you do, I apologize for that. Now let's get forward and start with the React.js. So let's get started. First and foremost, a quick disclaimer that crash courses means we are rushing through various topics. It's not going to be as in-depth that you are much more familiar in my courses at least. We take topics like too much in-depth, talk about them, explore them, experiment on them. But in this case, we are going to be rushing through, but I'll try my best to explain them as much as possible. But again, I hope you understand these are crash courses. So with that aside, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I forgot one more thing, that all exercise files and everything is available at Learn Code Online. Check out online courses. This is a free course with the name of Crash Course. You can just enroll in that, or probably you're already in that, and you can check that out. All exercise files are also available. Okay, with that, let's move forward with the tools. So what are the tools that you need to get started with the crash course? So first and foremost, we're going to need a Node.js. Now, Node.js is a simple software. It's more than a software, but you can just simply install that on your system. It's available for Mac, Linux, Windows. I'll walk you through with that as well in a minute, and that's pretty much it. Now through Node.js, we're going to be installing a library in our system, which is React.js. Now we will be using Npm. I'll walk you through with that as well. First, just let's have an overview. And this React.js will help us to create a project. Now, when we create a project through React.js, the Npm, it helps us to give us some of the boilerplate code. That means we don't need to create all the files by ourselves. It just gives a basic boilerplate code, which is a starting point to write the React applications. Of course, we are going to need something to write our code as well. It can be any editor like Sublime Text, VS Code, Atom, brackets, whatever is your choice. Feel free to just enjoy there. I'm going to be using VS Code because from last like couple years, I am absolutely loving VS Code. So that's why I'm going to be using that. And last but not the least, we are going to need a browser as well. If you're watching this video, I'm pretty sure you already are having a browser. So my recommendation for this particular crash course is the Chrome. But in case you are an Internet Explorer fan, I would like to ask you just one question. Why? Why? Okay. So let's go ahead and visit a couple of places from where you need to download a couple of things. First and foremost, nodejs.org. So from nodejs.org, we need to have a node being installed on our system. So just click on LTS. We're going to be preferring LTS for this one. Just click on that and it's going to download automatically the node for you. So in this case, just downloading the PKG file for me, but in your case, it's going to download the appropriate file for you. Things like exe or whatever seems good to be good for you. It's going to download that one for you. So that is the first thing that we are going to need. Now, what Node actually gives you is a command line utility for you through which you can install a more system. Okay, so just go ahead and download that. Pretty simple install. Next, I click agree kind of a stuff. Now, through the node, we're going to be working on React. So we need to take a look on this React as well. And by the way, VS Code and Chrome are pretty easy to find, so I'm not going to show you the website for them. So let's go ahead, and this is the website which we'll be revisiting quite a lot during this entire crash course. So first and foremost is let's just see how we can create a project for that. So we're going to click on the docs. And by the way, before we move forward, there are a couple of interesting stuff being mentioned up here. So take a look on that. Let's click on the docs, and then I'm going to go ahead and I will check out that what are these things. So it says add React to the website, create a new React app. Sounds interesting. That's exactly what I really want to do. So most of this documentation is actually going to talk about that how you can actually work on internet. But there is a section where it shows you a couple of command lines as well through which you can have it. So let's zoom it. It says npx create React app and my app. So what is this actually? So you might have heard about npm install. As soon as you install Node.js onto your system, it gives you a utility known as npm, which will help you to install anything at all. A similar kind of a thing is npx as well, the recent one. So, but the question which is unanswered yet is, what is this create React app? So for that, we have to go on to another website to find it out. So we're going to go on npmjs.com. I hope I'm right about it. So on the npmjs.com, we can search for a package, and we're going to search for a package create React-app. Make sure dashes are super important and just hit enter. It's going to give you an exact match at the very top, and just click on that. So this is the utility that we want to install. And once you have installed the node, the npm is already there in your system. And all you have to do is just use this one. And it seems it's a very popular library. Over 88,000 downloads in just a week. These are not monthly or yearly. These are just weeks. So you can imagine that how many people are trying to learn React and implement that. Even if we take the industry standard, like 2 or 3% of conversion, these are too many developers for React. So yes, it's getting really popular. So how do we install it? We can just click on this, and it just copies this code in on my clipboard. npm I create React app. So how do we install it? So go ahead and fire up your terminal, and there we go. If you're on a Windows, then it's going to be a little bit different for you. You need to just search for it, right click on it, and make sure you open it up as administrator. Otherwise, things are not going to work. So if you're on the Windows, just paste this command as it is, npm I create React app. Make sure dashes are there, no spaces. Okay. It's going to install it absolutely fine for you. And you can also optionally give an option of -g here. -g means we can install it on globally. I highly recommend that you give this command, because we want to access the React from anywhere. So go ahead and run this command. If you are on a Mac or Linux, then we also have to give the sudo option here, because there's no way to open the terminal using like right click and administrator. So we have to give sudo. It's going to ask your password. Go ahead, provide that. It's going to be all good. Okay, so there we go. That's all it takes to install the React onto your system. And once it is installed, then we can go back onto this guy here and can say that, hey, now can I run this command? npx create React app and all this. And it's going to say, yes, you can do it now. So what we're going to do is I have actually created an empty folder on my desktop which says ReactJS crash course. It has a logo available in the exercise file as well. So we're going to create a React app just inside this folder. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's not going to be any magical stuff. It's just a regular stuff. So first and foremost, let's go to desktop or wherever the folder is. I'm going to say ReactJS crash course, do a quick ls. There's nothing apart from logo. Okay. Moving forward, how do I create my first application? I'm going to simply say npx create dash react dash app and then the app name. So I'm going to call this as LCO to do app or LCO to do. LCO to do is fine. Now, one quick thing that you need to be cautious about it, because in the recent version of the React, they don't allow the capital letters in creating the project name. So you have to make sure that you are all lowercase. Let's hit enter. And now it's gonna do its magic. It's gonna create a couple of projects and going on stuff like that. So no big deal. And there we go. It's usually very fast in the process, but first time it may take a little bit while. And of course, things actually sometimes depend on your internet speed as well, because it fetches up that library from online and just places it onto your system. Let's go ahead and see that. So there we go. LCO to do is available now. Let's zoom it a little bit. LCO to do is here. It gives first and foremost a package.json file. More files are going to come up in a minute, but first and foremost, this is the most important file. Okay, looks pretty good, pretty interesting. Actually, what we can do is we can hit the fast forward so that you don't have to just sit around and watch this bar to fill up. Let's wait for a few seconds. Okay, so finally it has installed all the necessary things for us. It has also given us some of the information up here. Some of the information is you can just run an npm start to start the development server. There is npm run build, test, eject, and we suggest that you start by typing cd into the project and then npm start. Okay. Sounds good. Let's follow the advice being given to us by this, but we're not going to do it right here. Surely we can, but there is a better way of doing it. So first and foremost, what I recommend you is fire up your code editor. There's an update available. No, I'm not going to do it right now. I'm recording a video. Okay, so we're going to just go up here and we can see tons of files being up here. We're going to discuss them in a little bit detail. First and foremost, just drag and drop this folder up here. And there we go. Come on, I don't want to update right now. Okay. Let's go ahead and expand this. I don't have much of the real estate on the screen, but it's good. It's good. Okay. So how do we do that? How do we play more stuff? So first and foremost, a quick shortcut, hit down your control key and the tilde key. Your tilde key is just below your escape one. So hit control and tilde and just fire up the inbuilt terminal onto this VS Code. Now directly we can run the command. Let's quickly take a look on the command. This says npm start. Now there are lots of command in the npm like run, build, test, eject to do various stuff. Npm start is the most easiest one. We're gonna see where that command is. But right now, all I want to do is npm start. That's it. That's all what we want to do. Now, within a few seconds, it's going to automatically open up some things on your browser or may ask some things like this that, hey, this VS Code wants to have an access of Chrome. Do you really want to give it? Just say OK. So that's how we do that. Now, notice here that on the browser, it says localhost :3000. That's the server where React application is going to work. So this is your default React application. Sounds good. Looks pretty awesome. And to be honest, I love this dark theme. Previously, it was just all white, but I prefer this one here. Okay, so this is the exact thing that we are having, and we're going to recreate that as well. One of the easy things to learn about anything is to recreate the stuff. We're going to do that. Okay, so that things are working absolutely fine. We can go up here, and I'm going to just minimize this one a little bit. I don't need this much of the space. Let's quickly talk about some of the structural file, and then we're going to talk more. Starting from the bottom, readme.md, whenever you upload your project on services like GitHub, Bitbucket, or anything, these are the default files being available. So it's very necessary that before uploading your project, you mention a little bit more details in the MD file. I do have a separate video on YouTube talking about these markdown files, MD. Then we have the package.json, which is the meat part of the entire stuff. Can you notice up here this node module folder? This node module folder is being generated based on this package.json file. Whenever you're going to download any project from GitHub or somebody sends you this project, he's never going to send you this node module, because this folder can be recreated by running a simple command on your terminal that says npm space install, and this node module folder will be automatically recreated. So since it can be recreated, nobody sends that or nobody uploads that. This folder is being created based on totally the things which are mentioned in the package.json file, like what are the libraries or dependencies I need to install, like React, React DOM, React scripts, what are the scripts that you want to run. Whenever I say npm start, it runs this script, the very first one. There are others as well, build, test, eject. I can write my own as well, no problem in that. And then we have got some of the browser list, some of the development list, and a whole bunch of things. This file can be a little bit messy. And whenever we install anything new, like let's just say you want to install Bootstrap in the React, we go ahead and just do some stuff on the terminal. That stuff makes an entry in the package.json file first and then try to install it. So that's how the React actually works. And not a big deal. It's pretty easy. It looks like really messy, but it's super easy. The log.json file is a core file when you want to work in the Babel, Webpack and stuff. Then it is being done. Most of the time we don't touch it. It can break the application. Gitignore is Git related file, so it's never going to upload the things. Whatever is mentioned in the gitignore, it's going to ignore that while updating your Git repository, like node modules, PNP files, stuff like that. Okay, close that down. Now source.js, this is the meat part where we do all of the amazing stuff in that. And finally, the public folder, in which some of the public files are like whatever we are going to do in the source.js are actually being exported into this public folder. So most of these things like React, Angular, they are SPA, single page application. So they just host everything and loads everything in this index.js. So that's how it actually works. And can you see this root? Everything is injected just right it here, exactly where my cursor is. Everything is injected there and it just works like that. And React is moreover like a little bit on the magic that the things it does, including the reload of the virtual DOM. It sounds a little bit magical. And yeah, programming is all magical. Okay, so there we go. Let's minimize all of these folders. Let's open up the magical, amazing folder source. Okay, in the source, we can see there is a logo.svg, the logo that we have seen, the React logo, looks like numbers at this case. And then we have a couple of other files as well, like app.css, of course, CSS file, app.js, yes, the main file from where we write all of our amazing stuff. There are some of the test cases as well. You can have some of the testings here. Index.css, index.js, like from where we do all the rendering stuff and all the routing stuff. And then we have some of the service workers. We don't touch that. This is an optional code. It's return service register is not called by default. And most of the cases we don't touch it. Okay, now everything is clear. Not everything, you know some of the basic file structure about the React. It's time that we go back onto the documentation, have a little bit fun. Okay, one more thing, I forgot to discuss about that one as well. Let's open up this app.js. Let's talk a little bit onto this app.js, then we'll go back onto the documentation, we'll show you some of the stuff. Specifically, the point that I want to touch is this keyword here, which says function. This is the reason of panicking, a panic alert. A lot of people get panicked that, hey, it says function, but all the tutorials, all the videos, all the courses that I see, it doesn't say function there. It says always class there. Now, there can be a great debate about which one you should use, function or the classes, but I'm going to point your attention towards something known as hooks for a minute. This is again strictly for intermediate users. I'll come back onto the beginners in a second. Okay, so let's go on to something new. Again, new word is written here, hooks, and directly just point on to using state hook. So what you're going to notice up here, let's zoom it a little bit for all the intermediate kind of user. Notice here, this is a class-based component. We see the word class here, and this is how we write our state in the class-based component. And exactly this is how we write our constructor or our state in the functional component. So yes, this exact example here proves that you can either use the functional or you can use a class-based component. It's totally almost familiar code. Here, of course, it's a little bit more code, more verbose. Here we have a shortened code, surely a little bit more onto the futuristic approach. The class is more over a classic approach. But again, you can use any of them. in this crash course, first I'm going to go through with the functional approach. I'm going to walk you through with a functional example, and later on we're going to switch on to the class example, okay? But again, by no means I'm saying that we're going to touch the hooks, because if you're using totally a functional component, then we have to touch on the hooks that I really don't want to do in this particular video, maybe later on based on the comments, but surely. So this is the exact thing that I want to touch upon. Okay, intermediate stuff is over. Let's come back and jump on to the beginner stuff. Okay, so here's our goal, what we really want to do. There we go. What we're going to do, first and foremost, we are going to recreate this application from the scratch, and then we are going to create our own application, and we'll understand more about the working and the functionality of a React application. Okay, so let's take a quick tour of the React documentation. Okay. So let's quickly jump on to the main concept. So you're going to see a lot of things going upon in the React. Things that you can read after watching this video. I highly recommend not to go like too much in depth. Just have a look onto this component and the props. So this is the one thing that you might want to study a little bit. A little bit study should be done absolutely 100% on state and the lifecycle events as well. We're going to touch on them a little bit. I don't think so we're going to touch on to the lifecycle events in this particular video, but surely it's worth readable. Okay, so that's it. That's all what we want to do for this particular section. Let's go ahead and go up here, and what we're going to do. Okay, I'm going to just minimize this one here. So how we're going to proceed for this one? There's too much of the code written here. So how can I explain this code to all of you? So what I recommend you is open up your app.js. Let me open that up. Open up app.js, select all of it, and just delete it. This is much more easier. There's nothing inside, no code. So it's much more easier to explain it right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to recreate the application, whatever there was. And this is going to help us to understand each and every bits and pieces of the React. So follow along with me. I highly recommend to write all the stuff along with me. So what we're going to do is, first and foremost, we are going to write import React from and React. So remember, while installing the dependencies, we saw that we have React, React DOM, and React scripts. So one of the things that we want to import is the React. So all the automatic functionality like virtual DOM, reload, and stuff is going to automatically come as soon as you write this line. Okay, moving further, we want to import a logo as well. In case you remember that we do have a logo going up here as well. Remember this logo.svg? So it's a React logo. We want to import that as well. So let's go ahead. You can use our own logo. We will do that. But right now, let's just use the React logo. We're going to call this as logo, and that's going to come up from. Now, in order to bring up anything, first and foremost, if it is in the same directory, we write /. If it is in the one directory back, we write .. and then we access all these other libraries. So since the logo is actually in our current directory, I can simply say // and simply go for logo.svg. Usually it gives me a suggestion. Sometimes it's not really happy with me, so it doesn't give me any of that. So there we go. Logo is imported. Okay. And notice one more stuff here, app.css. There are some CSS files available to us. Notice here app logo, app header, app link, and some of the keyframes to rotate the logo as well. So these are coming up from here. I'm not going to rewrite the CSS because it's not a crash course on CSS, rather React, so I'll save your time in writing any of the CSS. But I definitely want to bring that up. So all I can do is, I don't need to import it something like call it something from, because I just want to import that, and that's all I want to do. So all I can do is I can directly say I want to import this simply app.css. So that's all I want to do. There we go. So hopefully app.css is now being imported. Okay, there we go. Looks pretty good. Now coming up to the part. Now you can create two types of components. The one is the class base, one is the functional base. First and foremost, we're going to go ahead and create a functional base component. Now, functional base components are pretty easy to create. All you have to do is create a function and then export it out. Now, what happens after we export it out, actually that is being automatically handled by your index.js. It expects you that you're always going to pass on this app from this app. So that's all being taken care up here directly by these service workers. But right now we can just go for that. So we are going to create app, And there we go, we have created that. Now, in case you want to change the name of app, obviously associated things needs to be changed. Like in the index.js, don't expect that app is going to come up. Whatever you're going to export, it is going to expect that. So a couple of changes needs to be there in case you want to change the name app here. Okay, so there we go. Our functional component is ready. Now we can export it directly here and can write export default function app. We can actually do that, but it's actually better here in this particular case that we use a separate line for exporting. So export default app. Okay, now that is the core minimum viable application in the React using the functional component. Now, one very essential thing in whenever you are doing a React app is to have something inside the app. Otherwise, what's the point of having a function? And we do return a very specific thing in these one. So we're going to write a simple return. Of course, it requires a semicolon. Okay. So what does the React app actually expects you to return something? It expects you that you are going to return at least one component or one element in it. It can be anything. I can just simply say h1 and essential, one very, very essential thing. Whatever you are going to actually start, you need to end that. What do I mean by that? Since I have started this h1 component, I have actually used the h1 because you actually technically don't write HTML here. This is JSX. It looks exactly same as HTML, but it's not. It's not. It's computer world. Things are not that they exactly look. This is JSX. So there can be a good question that what if I don't have an h1? I have something which is just a single element. Like for example, I just want to have this BR, a line break element. What in that case? In that case, you have to make a component self-closing. That is definitely allowed, but whatever starts needs to end. Either it can be a self-closing element or it can be like that. Okay. Another rule that you have to follow, you cannot get away from that, is let's just say you have an h1 element and you write my name up here and you have another paragraph. Okay, and paragraph says my last name, which is pretty big. And you notice there is an error. And definitely there is an error going up. Why is that error? And notice in the error it says itself, JSX expression must have one parent element. There are two things we learned up here. First and foremost, it's not HTML, it is JSX, hence proved, and you can only return one element. So how do we go away from this kind of stuff? The usual way of going away from that is wrap up everything inside a division. So that's like the most easiest stuff that you can get away. Cut that out and just paste it up here, and there we go. So that's one hack. Not a hack, that's a way how everything just works up here. Okay, so there we go. I'm gonna remove this one. So right now you can actually save this and watch this onto your browser that this is gonna work, and see, application is not giving any error. It's just working fine. Not looking the prettiest on the world. It's not gonna get any design awards, but yeah, it just works. It just works. Let's go back up here. And what we are gonna see further. Let's remove that. Okay, one more very interesting thing which makes a lot of people confusing. So how do we have a class? Let's just say we know there is a class that is equals to container. This is not gonna work in the React at least. Oops, Command Z. This is not gonna work at least in the React. Now I'm gonna add something into this division, otherwise it will make it automatically self-closing. So I'm gonna just have an h1. I'm going to insert my name. That's it. So what you're going to notice here, as soon as I write this class container, although in my app.css, I am having container. No, I'm not having container. I'm having this app. Let's go ahead and change that to app. Okay. Is it smaller app? No, it's a bigger app. Okay. So there we go. Class name all done. So what you're going to notice is nothing is going to take a change because the class keyword is not allowed in the React. Like it's allowed, but not at this place. So what we do actually in order to get away from that, wherever we need to write the HTML classes, we just call it as class name. Yeah, kind of a tricky hack, but that's exactly what we follow up here. Okay. Now when I save this, it kicks in, and now Hitesh Gatson Center. That is not what really is an amazing example, but there we go. Okay, so we've got our basics all done. Now, only thing that's remaining up here is, told you, React is not that difficult. It's super easy. We're gonna get rid of this one up here, and we are gonna give some of the amazing things. Like whatever you wish to have in a regular HTML, you can actually get and start with that. For example, I can simply say class name, and that is gonna be equal to app-header, there we go. And we can write all the stuff up here. For example, if you want to insert the images, then things actually becomes a little bit tricky again. So what we do is we go ahead and write our image. Now, as soon as you write the JSX image, then first and foremost, it needs to be self-closing. And then we write src to load up the source up here. Okay, so how do we write the source? Now, since we have imported the logo just right at the top, and we have created this import statement, we can use this variable. Whenever I need to use a variable, I use these curly braces. Some call this as mustache braces as well. I don't mind it. So we call it as simply logo. Okay, now surely we can use a simple class name up here because this default application is having a class for this logo. We just saw that it is app-logo. So we can actually call this as app-logo, and it's going to work absolutely fine. And there we go. Everything got kicks in back. So there we go. Logo is now turning. That's all classic CSS, nothing what we are doing. Okay. And surely, just after the header, I am going to write a simple paragraph. Why not? Let's just write a simple paragraph that says, learn React with Hitesh crash course. That sounds good. So there we go. Let's go back. Come on, where are you? And it's not visible. It's not visible because it's not having the classes and all these things. So we need to get a classes and all these stuff up again here. But again, you got the point that how this can be done and how this can be used and utilized. I'm going to remove this one up here. So there we go. This is the very basic example of how things can be done. And let me hit the command Z. And actually, if I just move everything up in the header, surely it's going to be visible. Let's go back. Where are you? There we go. Learn React. So again, no big deal. This is just like a fancy stuff. We shouldn't pay much attention of whether we are able to get CSS or correct or not. Okay. So very easy stuff goes up here, but there is one issue up here. Remember, I told you that we are going to have a state, some of the components as well. So what are these states in component? Component, simply, in order to understand the state and prop, let's talk about it a little bit. The prop simply means properties. Whenever you want to pass on information from one component to another component, we use props or properties. For example, there is a separate file which says basic button information, and there is some text in the button that need to be passed on. So we can pass on this button text using the props. So that's what the properties are being used. While on the other hand, the state is something like this mug. Now, in the React, we actually maintain a lot of state, means what the variable is storing, that information is being stored at a variety of places. So this information is stored inside a state. Anybody who wants to make a change in anything like a comment, anything that you want to render on the web page, we consult first with the state, and state is like a central place which stores everything up here. So there is a limitation that if you want to use a state, then in the previous version of the React, we couldn't actually do that by using function because functions are not capable of storing that constructor kind of a thing. So we used to have classes in that. But as we saw right now, when we were talking about this intermediate stuff about this hooks is a new introduction in the React, which helps us and allows us to have some of the more APIs through which we can actually store this state. So this line exactly up here, let me zoom that. This line exactly here is responsible for storing kind of a state in the functional component. So we can go ahead and use this format to store our state, or an equivalent class example being given by us the React is the class-based component that you can use. And for most of you who are watching my channel, I'm pretty sure they're aware of the concept of object-oriented programming. Not like a guru of that, but a little bit like classes do have constructor and stuff like that. So in the class, we can see that we are extending the React component, means it's inheriting something. And then we can create a constructor that can hold our state. Remember this dot state? The only issue that comes up is the understanding of this. So the binding of this can be a little bit confusing for some of the beginners, and that is why they have released this functional component. In the functional component, you don't see this keyword. This keyword in itself is a little bit challenging to understand because it works a little bit different in JavaScript than compared to Java or Ruby. Do we have this in Ruby? Any other language. So this is what we are doing. Also, you're going to notice a couple of hooks here. Like, for example, use state. These are some of the keywords I want to point your attention. Set state is also one. So the point is that state is like a very sacred place. You don't just, nobody goes and touch it. If we want to make any modification or editing in the state, we always use this set state method, and then we update anything. So that's like the basic of it. And surely you can work without the hooks as well. The only difference is you're going to get is if you're not using the hooks, then you have to use the class-based component. If you're using the hooks, then you can just directly use this one-liner and can go and get away from that. So there we go. Now you're on to the intermediate scale. You were able to understand me there. Ah, that's nice. That's awesome. Okay. So let's go ahead and do some of the fun stuff into the React as well. Okay, first and foremost, I'm gonna open up this guy. I'm gonna select this one because I want to copy this logo. I'm gonna zoom up here. I'm gonna go up into LCO to do. I'm gonna go up into the source and I'm gonna paste this up here so that it's available on my main file. Now I'm gonna also show you one more thing. Whenever I'm going to give you this exercise files, the node modules is not going to be present. So what you have to do is simply just drag and drop this folder in your VS Code, open up the terminal, just like that. I'm going to kill this process for a minute, Control C to kill that, and Control L to go up at the top. So what we are going to do is I'm going to simply write Npm Install. That's it. Just hit the enter. Automatically this node module library is going to be created in your system and everything is going to work fine after that. Okay, so now things are all good. I'm going to just write the part again, where it is, npm start. Yep, that's what I want to run. Okay, and I'm going to close this so that it starts the server. Looks great, everything is fine. Okay, let's move on to up here, close this guy, and let's create a simple application so that I can explain most of you. It's not going to be as complex as I regularly do in my courses like Firebase and databases and all amazing stuff. It's going to be absolutely basic one, but surely it's going to help you a lot. Now, first and foremost, notice we do have this logo white being up here, so we want to import that. I want to use my own logo, so that's why we are having it. And we also need to make some changes into the app.css because yeah, we have some more stuff going on. So I'm going to just remove everything from here. Don't worry, I'm not gonna let you to watch me typing all the CSS stuff. I'll do that in the fast forward manner, or I'll skip that part into the video editing. But right now, let's go ahead and do the basic stuff. So again, I highly recommend to write them instead of just generating these stuff. So first and foremost, let's use the React. So we're going to simply call this as React from this React. And one more interesting thing that you should actually watch out. This is totally your variable. You can call it whatever you like because you're importing everything as whatever you like to call them. Call it R, call it React, call it small React. Totally on you. That's exactly what I mean. And then, okay, that is too much. We're going to go ahead and import the logo, but this time I'm not going to import the logo from the React. I'm going to import my own logo. So I'm going to simply say logo, logo. I'm going to say LCO-logo. Usually it gives me suggestions, usually VS Code gives me, but sometimes it's not super happy, -white.png. So hopefully the logo is imported now. And last but not the least, we are going to import the CSS as well. So I'm going to simply say /app.css. I'm going to write my own customized CSS for that one. So we are going to work on that a little bit later. Now let's go ahead and we have already created a functional component. Now we are going to create a class-based component. Again, it's almost exactly same that how we do that, but a couple of stuffs goes here and there. So in the class-based component, how do we work? First and foremost, we write a keyword class, of course. We call it as app because our index.js is waiting for an app to be exported. And then we simply write extends, there we go. And we are going to extend from React component. There we go. And there we go. The class is defined. Now do whatever you like to do inside this class. That's all exactly. And by the way, we just saw about these things just a minute ago in the hooks as well, in case you remember that. Now, once we're inside the class, we of course need to render some of the stuff. So if you're defining a class-based component, then one thing that you have to make sure that you call this method render. In the render, what you're expected is you should return something. So we're going to say return, and there we go. Now inside this return, we are going to do the same things. You are expected to return a JSX. So we're going to simply say an h1, and we are going to say Hitesh. There we go. Save that. It's not going to look the prettiest thing on the planet, but surely it's going to do. And okay, we forgot to do one thing, which is exporting the stuff. How can I? Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Again, we can debug that, no problem. Export default app, and there we go. Save that. And hopefully, are you reloading? And there we go. Okay, LCO logo, my bad, typo, LCO logo. Debugging is a skill, and I am pretty bad in typing. I just do that. But again, finally, we were able to grab this Hitesh up here. So yeah, we have worked on the functional component. We have worked on the class-based component as well. And now it's time that we write some of the amazing stuff so that we can work on it. So I'm going to hit this return is actually just a one-liner. That's why it's doing the stuff, which I don't like it. Okay, there we go. And now we're going to return. First and foremost, I'm going to add a division. You can use the modern HTML5 syntax where blocks and sections and all these amazing stuff goes on. But again, now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to get an image. So self-closing one, surely. And first and foremost is get a source. We are going to use a variable again, logo. Now in this, I'm going to also mention a couple of properties like width is going to be 100. Now in the React, you actually technically through other ways you can mention the pixels and the RAMs and all of that. But React and React Native both actually are trying to go into the way where they automatically do all these stuff. So all you have to do is write 100 and it's going to evaluate the things based on the browser. So we can have a separate talk on that probably later. And that's all what we're going to do. Let's just save this and see if our logo pops up. Yeah, a little bit logo. And once this logo is up here, we can actually write some of the classes for that. So we're going to simply have a class name. And what do we call this class? We are going to call this as logo. Okay, let's go into the app.css and let's define some of the logo part up here. First and foremost, let's go ahead and use some of the body stylings on the body. I'm going to simply say background is going to be of a color. We absolutely are loving this color at Learn Code Online, and recently everything is now turning up into this color. This is 86109B. So this is moreover a purplish color that we are using. We're loving it. And for the entire this one, I'm going to get a font size of 20 pixel. We want everything to be big. Okay. Now, once we are done with that, then we are going to go ahead and do some of the classic stuff with the logo. And we're going to make a display of block. Okay, no big deal. We're going to simply say margin at left is going to be auto. And margin on the right is going to be auto. And in case you're wondering how I'm able to write just by writing ML and MR, this is something which comes in default by VS Code known as Emmet. I again do have a free course on Emmet. You should check that out. Save that and let's see how the things are going. Told you, it automatically looks good. You can give it a little bit margin from the top as well. No big deal, but I'm going to just keep it like that. Now, don't worry. I'm not going to sit or watch you to... I'm not going to let you sit and watch me painfully writing all the CSS. I'll do that from now onwards. I'm going to do that in the fast forward manner. But again, it's going to be all simplistic CSS, not of a big deal. Okay. Once we have this image, then we simply want to have an h1, and this is going to be simply saying LCO to do app, just like that. Surely it's going to have a class name because I want to modify that a little bit, but not now. This is going to be app.title. Okay, looks pretty good to me. Once I'm outside of that, I'm going to create a simple div whose class is going to be container. There we go. And my ES6 works in the JSX as well, so no big deal. We're going to simply say add an item, ... just like that. After that, we are going to have a simply line break, Command Z, add an item, there we go. And we're going to have a simple line break, there we go. And then we're going to use an input. So let's go ahead and write a simple input. What type of input do I need? I need a text-based input, so input colon text is the one that I'm looking up for. Okay, it's asking me for a couple of things as well, name, ID, and all that stuff. I would like to just separate them on the next line because that's how I like it. And there we go. There we go. Okay, for this one, ID, I don't think so I need an ID. I'm going to remove that. We only need a class name, so we're going to call this as class name. The class name is going to be input-text. We are going to write the CSS later on. Alignment, I love that. Okay, now it's good. And the type is text, the class name is up here. Let's add a placeholder as well. The placeholder is going to be writer to do. Save that, and it's going to look horrible, but we're going to make that good in the CSS a little bit later. First, let's just dump out all the things that we really want to have it. Okay, once we are having this input, just after that, we would like to have a simple button. There we go. The button is going to be of type, let's just say a regular button will do for us. Okay, class name, of course, why not? Class name is going to be add-btn. Surely you can use Bootstrap as well with the React, but right now I don't want to do that. Okay. And this button is going to simply say add to do. Okay. We should have a button now. Let's just go ahead and check. Ta-da! We got a button, very teeny tiny and ugly button. We're going to make that beautiful after CSS. Okay. Once we have this button going up, then simply we want to create another division up here. In this division, we are going to simply hold up a few of the list items. So we're going to simply have a div, and we're going to call this as a class name as well. So we're going to put a dot list. There we go. Okay, inside this division, we're going to have some of the oops, not that. We want to have an unordered list item. Come on. There we go. This is the one I want. Abbreviation by Emmett. Not anything else. Okay, so what do we have in the unordered list? In the unordered list, first and foremost, what do we have? We have a list item. There we go. Inside the list item, we want to have a couple of things. First and foremost, an input checkbox. So there we go, input checkbox. Okay, one stuff done. Just after the input checkbox is being done, I want to add a line. So I'm going to say record YouTube videos. Okay, looks pretty good. And once I'm done with that, I want to have a button. So I'm going to simply have a button, and this button is going to say delete. Okay, we're going to add a class name as well, because why not? Class name is going to be simply btn. Okay, nothing else, nothing is going to work. It's just going to be displayed on up here. So we have a checkbox as well. We are going to get rid of this stuff. But right now we do have this all stuff going on. We do have a delete, and we can make that a little bit beautiful up. There we go. So technically our displayed stuff is all going up here, but there is nothing of the React that we are using. So what we need to do is, first and foremost, let's just write the CSS because it's too hard to work on the ugly stuff. Let me quickly fast forward the video and write some CSS. Okay, so not an award-winning job that we have done here, but yeah, it's looking a little bit better and more visually pleasant, a little bit pleasant, not much. Again, this is not a course on CSS, otherwise I would have made it absolutely amazing. So we have a recording to do which says write a to do here, and simply we are adding that to do that is going to be added up here, and then we can just mark it as like done or not, and then we will be able to delete that as well. So that's the exact functionality we want to go up from here. So what we're going to do for this part, let's go back and talk about how we are going to take care of that. Surely we are going to be adding more functionality up in these buttons and all of that, and how do we do that? But first and foremost, we're going to go up at the very top, and let's discuss a little bit on to the constructor part. So when we talk about this constructor, I hope you remember that constructor is the first thing that is being created as soon as the class is invoked. And by the term invoked, I simply means whenever the class is being created. Exactly same kind of a thing we can do in the React as well. We can create a constructor which can hold the default things up here. Now these default thing is also going to store the state as well. Remember I talked about the state in the functional as well as in the class-based component. Now you can have class in both of them, in the functional using hooks, in the class by using constructor. So feel free to use whatever you like. So how do we actually create that state and constructor? And there are a few rules that you have to take care. Although I said React is a library and more the rules are actually implemented in the framework, but React is a little bit more than a library. So how do we create that? We simply call the constructor. There we go. So how do we do that? Whenever a constructor is being called, we actually call the props with that as well. The reason why in this case we are not going to be using the props, but let's just say you are throwing something from other component into this file, then those properties can only be read if we have this prop. So again, we are going to call this super props. So that's the syntax that we follow up here. Now let's create the state. So we create the state by saying this dot state, and state is nothing more than an object. There we go. That's it. So in the state, what we're going to have, first and foremost, we're going to have an array of list, which is going to store all the list items that we have. And not only that, it's going to store a new item. Okay, so new item is initially empty, and make sure you put a comma there as well. Okay, so how do we proceed in that? The procedure is really simple. As soon as we are going to add a new list item, that list item is going to go into the new item first. Once that new item is being fetched, or we have any new value in the list, a new item, we're going to push that value into the list so that we have an entire array of the to-dos. Once we have an array of these to-dos, we are going to just loop through over them, and we are going to display them in our to-do list. Sounds like a plan? Yes, sounds like a plan. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so how do we actually go ahead and do that? For that, we are going to create a couple of methods just above the render so that we can have it. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is we are going to create a method which is going to say add item. You can name it anything. And this add item is going to have a value to do value. This to do value, we're going to create a simple, we're going to call this method as soon as somebody clicks on that submit button. We're going to take the value from our input field, and we're going to fetch that into this method. And that value is to do value. Okay, so how do we go ahead and do that? First and foremost, a quick check that we want to do, and we want to do a quick check of if to do value is not equals to empty, then only we want to proceed. Otherwise it's empty. Why do we want to process anything? So what we're going to do is, first and foremost, we are going to create a new item with the unique ID. The advantages are endless for having a unique ID for the item. Number one is we can loop through it. In the React, actually, if you want to loop through anything, it's always better that you have a unique ID for it. Apart from that, you can store it in the database, you can store it in the local storage, so possibilities and usage are endless. So we're going to simply say const, we're going to call this as new item, and let's create an object. So how do we create? This object is going to have a couple of properties, ID. The ID, we can use simply date.now. Oh, that's different. Data. Date.now to get a unique value, because every time it's going to have a new value. The value, what is the value up here? That value is simply to do value, which is being passed to us. And by default, we're going to say is done is actually false. We can just flip the values based on when the user checkmark that. No big deal. It can be done. Okay. And we're going to save that. Put a it's not compulsory to have a semicolon, but yeah, I like it. Okay, so this is being done. A new object is being created, but this is it. We have created an object. It's not going anywhere. So we need to put this object or copy this object into this list. How do we do that? We are going to copy this current list item into this item array by using something known as little bit advanced in the JavaScript world. So we're going to simply create const list, and then we are going to be using this triple dots. And then we are going to call this dot state dot list. So what is happening up in this particular line of code? We are saying that I want to create a variable list which is going to hold all the values being appended. So triple dot means you want to append all the existing values into it. Once that is being created, means all the values are into this list. This new list is available. All I can do is say list dot push, and I'm going to simply add my new item up here. There we go. That's it. That's all what we have done. But now the problem is that I do have an item list on my local scope, this scope only, and I'm pushing the value. So the list is updated, no problem in that. Now, surely you can argue here that you should not use push, you should use other, but we are not worried about that part yet. Okay, so how do we update this list into this state? I cannot directly, surely I can actually call directly this one, but that is absolutely no in the world of React. So how do we proceed further after that? So once you have updated everything, then we use a very special method, which says this dot set state. Now this set state is a very special method. Whenever you want to update anything inside the state, you never touch the state directly in the React. You always touch that state by using the set state method. End of the story. Okay. So how do I do that? I use a simple object up here, and I say I want to update. What are the things you want to update? I want to update the list. I also want to update one more thing, which is my new item. New item needs to be empty now. Okay, once this is being updated, put a colon, and there we go. Okay, too much of the stuff going on for just few minutes in the video. Are we in the few minutes or few hours? I have no idea. So we're going to simply add an item. I hope this is absolutely clear for all of you. Pretty good, pretty easy stuff here. Okay. So we have created a simple method which adds the item. So how about now deleting the item? Now deleting the item can be a little bit tricky because first and foremost, we have to exactly click on the exact list item where we want to delete. Now, while deleting, this unique ID is going to help us much. So why don't we just go ahead and create another method just above the render to delete. Now, first designing the functionality is always a good part because after that, you just have to inject that functionality on the points where you want the function to happen. So we're going to call this as simply delete item, and the delete item needs to pass on an ID whenever this delete is going to happen. Remember, we do have an ID. There are endless valuable stuff that you can do with this ID. So how do we proceed with that? First and foremost, we bring out all the list up here. So we're going to simply say const list, and we need a copy of the list. So let's just copy all the list. This dot state dot list. Now we have a current copy of whatever the item we are storing in the list. Now we need to update the list. So we're going to say const updated list. That's a good name. And we are going to simply say list, and we're going to use the JavaScript again. This is exactly the point where JavaScript is being used a lot. And in my JavaScript series, I've talked about these methods a lot. Okay, so we're going to use a filter. Now, filter is a method which expects you to pass on a callback. So we're going to use the item arrow function, and then we are going to simply say item dot ID when it is not equal to ID. So what this line is going to do, this line is going to create an updated list, and it's going to fill up all the things inside it, but it's going to skip the one item, the item which actually matches the ID. So it's going to skip that part, and you got now your new list which omits the value which matches the ID. Okay, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Now all we need to do is update. Don't ever forget to update the stuff. Okay. So we're gonna call this dot set state. Remember, we never update that state directly. We always call the set state. There we go. Pass on the list. So what item do you want to update? I want to update the list item. With what item you want to update it? I want to update it with updated list. There we go. Now here we didn't call it like I want to update it list, like something like this, list colon list, because now the JavaScript is actually smart enough in ES7 that you don't need to be redundant in the code. But here we don't have the same name of the variable list. We have updated list. That's why we are having this one up here. Okay, so there we go. We have got our add item and we have got our all these stuffs going on. Okay. There is one more stuff still remaining, which we are going to be using. I'll talk about that in a minute. First, let me just write that. So we're going to say update input. So this is the method which we are going to use in a minute. It is always going to expect that you pass on an input in that. And then all we're going to do is update the state. So this dot set state. And all we want to do is update one element, which is new item being updated by input. Okay. I'm going to explain about this particular method in a minute. Just wait for a minute. Just bear with me that why we have created this one. Okay. Now it's time that we jump into the stuff where we actually want to do all the stuff, all the crazy stuff. So first and foremost, let's go up here in the container, add an item. So this is the input where we want to do all the magic to be happening up. Okay. So here comes the magical stuff. We can actually use a couple of more keywords up here in the input as well. Like for example, I can say required, and then you cannot actually avoid this stuff. Okay, now let's come up to the fun part. First and foremost, in this input, we're going to create a value here. Now this value is going to be updated by this dot state dot new item. The reason why we are doing this, because new item is actually going to store, and we are going to call this update input into that. Okay, so as soon as something is being changed inside this input box, we're going to call this one, and this is going to update this new item variable, which is also present in our state. So we want to actually update this one up here. Okay, so that whatever the item we are filling it up, it actually reaches up to the state. So we can call a method which says onChange. And in the onChange, we can provide this stuff. So how do we write that? We can simply call this one just like this. We can call E for any update. And then we can call this dot update input is being called. And the update input, we simply go for E dot target dot value. So now whatever the value is being updated, by using this onChange method, we will be able to grab this value. And since we have passed on this method, or we have called this method update input, that value will go into this method, and this method will get the input, and we'll call another method inside it, which is set state, and the set state is going to update that value into our state. Okay, too much of the stuff to just push this value up in the state, but that's all worth it. Okay. Now that value has reached to it, but actually this is going to actually work when we are going to push and set update here. So what we're going to do is, now we're going to create another method on this button as well. Otherwise, why there is a button up here? Let's go ahead, hit enter, just one more. And once anybody just says, I'm going to say on click, then what we're going to do, on click. There we go. So in this on click, we are going to fire up a callback up here. There we go. And we're going to simply say this dot, and now we need to add an item, because right now this is not going to work like that. So I think I'm running just ahead of me. So we need an on-click method that needs to call something to update all this state up here so that we can work on it. So we need to work on the method which says add item. And remember what we have done in the add item. We have performed all this stuff, the magical stuff that is being going on. So next up is we can just simply go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead. And where are you? there we go. We are going to simply go ahead and call this. So there we go. We have called this dot add item. So whenever we need to call any method, we have to actually use this keyword here. Now, because this keyword is actually a little bit tricky to understand, that's why we have the functional component up here. Okay, add item. So what do we pass on in this item? In this, we're going to pass on this dot state dot new item. And since we have this new item already up here, remember we did all this crazy stuff here. That is all just because we wanted to pass on this new item up here. Okay, we can do one more stuff here. It's a little bit unnecessary at this moment, but we can actually use a disabled keyword up here. And this can work something like this. We can simply say, if not this dot state dot new item dot length. So how this is actually working, this is a little bit trick that everybody uses in the React, because this state, this is right now the length is 0. So 0 is treated as false. So what we're doing is, as soon as there is some number, that means let's just say a number is, let's just say you have written 5 keywords here. So 5 is actually true. That makes it false. So disabled becomes false. So it's a kind of a trick that we use all the time. So this is what we are doing. Okay, now the things are going to be working fine, and we can actually console log. Why were we having the list is equals to, this should be all good. Let's just see why we are having the list empty. Let's hit a quick reload. Okay, empty list. Why we are having problem in this one? Okay, should be all. I found the bug. Actually, it was a little bit hard to see the bug. It was just like that. So yeah, sometimes debugging actually takes some time. No big deal. Debugging is a part of code, as I always say. So we can write a test up here. We can hit the add to do. Now the to do is actually getting up here, and we were able to reset the value as well. So that's all good. But right now the to do is actually only going on to the state. We are not looping through that state so that we can display all the data up here. So let's go ahead and try to loop through that. So looping through the data is actually the most easiest thing we can do once you understand the base of it. So how we're going to do that? Let's go into the bottom of it, and I want to loop through with this one here. So in order to loop through the element, what we're going to do is I'm going to just go just below this unordered list. I'm going to start my curly braces. First and foremost, what do I want to loop through? I'm going to loop through this dot state dot list. So this is what I want to loop. What do you want to loop through? I want to loop using a feature map, which is available in the JavaScript. Whenever it's going to loop, it's going to give you an item back. Once this item is available up here, I can return something. Make sure you use the return keyword. Otherwise, it's going to return the thing. It's going to do its job, but it's not going to display anything on the web page. So what do you want to return? I want to return a list item. So I'm going to start the list item up here, and I'm going to simply have a key. Now this key is going to produce a warning up here. Not this key, actually. If you don't use the key, then it's going to give you a warning. So in the React, we have a thing that says, if you want to loop through, make sure you prove that everything is unique, which you are looping through. There might be chances that you are looping through a value which is just like same value. So we have to prove that every value is unique. And this item.id is responsible for that. Now, surely there are other ways to prove that, yes, we are looping through a unique key every time, but you have to do it. Otherwise, it gives you a warning. In some of the cases, the warnings is actually absolutely nasty. Okay, once that is being the case, we simply want to have an input. So I'm going to just write input, not just copy. I'm going to use an input. There we go. And once I have this input, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to simply say, what type of input do I have? I have an input of, first and foremost, checkbox. Okay, and the name I can use simply is done. It doesn't matter in the name as of now. The checked, the default is going to be false. So we're going to simply say is going to be equal to item dot is done. There we go. Okay, so looks good. And we can also mark an on change as well up here. And there we go. And we are going to run a simple method. We're going to call a callback simply to do anything when the change actually happen. And this can be anything, but right now I'm going to just leave it as simply blank because surely I want to work on it, but not right now, not right now. I'm going to simply close that out. So my input is closed. Okay. Now I want to create another JavaScript tag and I want to say item. Remember, the item is the one thing that is being given to us by this map. It has a lot of properties like item.id, and not lot, but all the properties that we have created. So one of the property that we created was item.value. Where do we create that? If you remember, we have created this object, ID, value, and is done. So these are all the properties that we have created in that. So one of them I'm using is a value up here. Okay, after that, we need another button that we are having. So let's just have a button. And this button is going to just say delete, but we're going to add a couple of properties up here. First and foremost, the class name. Oops, where are you going? There we go. First and foremost, we are going to have a button. Let's call it a simply button. And then most importantly, I want to have an onClick method on it. Now, as soon as I have this onClick method, I'm going to call a callback. There we go. This callback is going to call to this dot delete item, and also most importantly, don't forget to pass on an ID. That is what we are working on the entire logic. Okay, so looks pretty good. Let's just save this, and now let's go back onto this guy up here. Let's add something up here. So we're gonna say test1, add it to do. There we go. To do comes up there. Test2, add. Okay, I'm gonna add my name, and let's hit add. I'm going to add an LCO as well. So fun. Now I'm going to delete the test2. So there we go. We delete that. And that is the core feature of the React. We don't need to hit the reload and all those amazing stuff that we can actually do. We surely can do that. But right now it's all good and okay. Okay, so this is all what we wanted to do. We can surely check mark that and uncheck that as well. Right now the onClick is not working. We have to actually write a little bit of the logic so that onChange actually works. And based on that, we can create a simple method which changes the class name into that. We can use the variable around the class name. Then it can show the checkoff and all of that, and pretty basic stuff that we can do up here. Okay, so I think that's it. That's the basic of the React. We have worked on that. Let me quickly summarize that. We created a constructor up here. Then we have worked on just two very simple methods, the add item and the delete item. The add item works on really simple. We first check out whether the things are empty or not. Then we create an object, new item. We update the list with that, push that into the stuff, and then we update the item up here. And similarly, we worked on the delete item, pretty simple logics and stuff, nothing groundbreaking, nothing absolutely extraordinary that we have done and worked up here. And there we go. We have created a simple React application. I do understand that this application is not very advanced because for the advanced, we require to have a separate dedicated course. I do have a separate course where I worked on Firebase, databases, and all those amazing stuff up here. So I would like to end up this crash course just up here. It's been too long for me for recording these videos. In case you want me to make more videos on anything, any topic that you would like, please notify me in the comment section. I would absolutely love to do that. It's been really long that I've been recording videos, so I think definitely I deserve a subscribe. So, and in case you want these exercise files, I'll put them in the mentioned link in the below section. And that's it. Please do subscribe, and bye-bye for now.